Good day. I welcome everyone who has joined us. My name is Olga Tamanova. I'm happy to welcome you in the Media Center of Ukraine today. Today we've invited you for the meeting where we'll be speaking about the financial stability. We'll be speaking about currency risks and challenges, whatever can our country face in 2025. I would like to introduce our speaker today. We have Andriy Dubas, President of the Association of Ukrainian Banks. Andriy, hello. Hello, Olga. Good day. Andriy, I would like to begin our conversation undoubtedly with the situation in the banking sphere. First of all, how you estimate it, how we are capable of providing stability in the banking system as of now, a couple of characteristics and maybe something about challenges. If we speak about, for instance, the beginning of the year, and in comparison with today, the most relevant information about the banking sector state and the main indicators, then altogether I would characterize the situation as a rather high positive level. First and foremost, one of the most important indicators of liquidity in the banking sector shows really high indicators and positions. Our banking system is super liquid, which means that banks are trusted in Ukraine in spite of the incredible pressure of the full-scale invasion of Russia to Ukraine for 3 years already. Mostly the financial sector and banking sector in particular is a kind of, well, mostly in the countries, the financial institutions are not always ready to such challenges. But as Ukraine is for the 11th year in the war, secondly, before the beginning of the invasion, we had 2 years of COVID turbulences. And obviously, since 2014 till 2019, the banking sector has been reformed. I say it is the phase of the reforms of banking sector 2014-2019. All of that allowed us to face the 24th of February 2022 in a rather confident position, and even till today we are confident and supporting this position. Definitely we need to be frank. All of that took place not only thanks to the banking employees and institutions, but undoubtedly their role should be mentioned as well. And also, a very important thing is to mention that in Ukraine, you've got the coalition of international states which are supporting Ukraine economically. Almost annually, Ukraine is getting the financial support from the coalition of the states as approximately $40 billion US dollars. Let us consider the US dollars currency. And this is a huge support which helps us cover the losses which are connected with non-military affairs, because out of the fees and taxes, we are covering defense issues, our internal fees and taxes, I mean, and external assistance is spent for, how can I say, a normal life of the country. Those are pensions and other expenses of the state budget which are not connected with the defense sector. So today in Ukraine we have 62 banks working. We've got and we've presented international banking groups and lots of private ones, the state capital banks. We have more than 1.5 years of a positive tendency of the growth of credit portfolio in Ukraine, both of the consumers' loan portfolio and also the loan portfolio of the businesses. And practically, if we consider and calculate 11 and 10 recent months, almost every month we have the growth of the passive part of banking sector. I mean deposits of the citizens and deposits of the businesses. So if we do not consider it as the level of trust, because if you trust me, then you can in fact give me some loan, right? If you don't trust me, then you will never do that. So we can see that out of the 12 last months, we have the 11th month of permanent growth of deposits of the population, and 10 of the 12 months the growth of deposits, the funds of the legal entities, the businesses. Then it's a nice indicator for our local banking system. As for loans, well, I'd like to delve deeper into that as well. A short remark about that. The loan portfolio in Ukraine, in our opinion, has achieved its lowest point in the middle of 2023. That was June, July of 2023, and since that moment we have gradual increase. Well, of course, we cannot so far speak about the pre-war indicators in some of the sectors. As you know, the pre-war indicators could be about hryvnia, but we do understand that we had the devaluation of hryvnia. Before the full-scale invasion, hryvnia cost, well, it was registered at 29.7, and before that even 27, 28 hryvnia. Today we have 41 hryvnia per $1, and for instance, in our statistics, which we publish at the website of the Association of Ukrainian Banks, we publish it as dynamic dashboards or graphs. And for instance, our indicator of loans and deposits in the banking system is not just nominally shown in hryvnia, but also we have the comparison with the foreign currency, the balance. So we would like to see the growth, whether hryvnia is devaluating or growing. We would like to have a different perspective as well, and definitely it is worth our attention. You mentioned about turbulence times. It seems to me that those times are never over. 2025 showed new challenges, the challenges of geopolitical sphere including. Let us look at those challenges. It's very important to hear your opinion how these challenges may impact the economy of our state. Unfortunately, definitely we can speak about the expectations of the decrease of assistance for our help, and also about the suspension of the important part of donors' projects in our country. So how can it impact us according to your estimates? Well, first of all, I'd like to drive your attention to the following. Those are not the first challenges of ours which we face at the international arena during the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine. First, when we faced such a substantial uncertainty for us was autumn-fall 2023, and the end of this uncertainty was in 6 months, in spring 2024. In the Chamber of Representatives in the United States of America, they couldn't vote for the issue about the support of Ukraine. I will not delve deeper into that. Was it only financial or military including? But for 6 months, we were in kind of the uncertain state. And the law drafts were also the requirement about some southern borders of the United States as a condition. Then these law drafts emerged. So I consider that during the full-scale invasion, that was the first situation out of which we understood that during turbulence times, there can be more turbulent or less turbulent times, right? So the main task, I think, for Ukrainian economy, for the Ukrainian financial system, was not just to go down to the emission funding of the budget. Because emission funding of the budget, and in simple words, it is just printing money, emission of money. That is, on the one hand, a very easy way and step, which then can spiral you down, and it is very hard to stop you then after that. Because it's not a secret for anyone, because in the Ukrainian budget, as of today, it's for half consists of assistance of our international partners. Only half well, let me not delve into depth of 51 to 49, 52 to 48. Approximately half of the state revenues are formed thanks to the fees and taxes. And the second part, thanks to the financial support of the state coalition. So why did it take place that we have such a disbalanced budget? It's very simple, because Russia attacked Ukraine in 2022 in a full scale, and we had a crazy increase of costs for defense. And then we had the substantial decrease of profits, because we had 25 or 30% of our GDP destroyed. Metallurgy, agrarian, arable lands, the outflow of people, and so on. We had the decrease of profits and the increase of costs, of losses. So how can we say? It is the situation. Thanks God we are not on our own in this situation. I will not even comment what could have happened if we were alone. But thanks God we are not alone in this situation. The European Union, the United States, and the Asian countries and other ones helped and go on helping Ukraine. Now answering your question about the new challenges which are taking place today. Frankly speaking, what do we see now? If some party of a big coalition treaty, considering different political processes, may consider a different point of view about the Ukrainian situation, then, I can confidently state now, then in this particular situation, it may happen that the second party can strengthen its position. It's becoming more proactive. Recently, in February, the Association of Ukrainian Banks organized the delegation of the heads of banks and financial institutions to Brussels, where we used to have meetings at the high level with the representatives of European Parliament and representatives of European Commission and other authorities and line organizations of banking sector. And during this period, that was the end of February, we could see the increase of the wish and proactive position of the European Union. That is why, as for me, that is good. Because when some party, some side is decreasing the speed, the tempo, another one may increase the speed. Well, maybe the question which worries the majority of Ukrainians, what can we expect of the foreign currency rate, exchange rate in 2025? What are your forecasts? That's a very interesting question. I will try to be as honest as possible. Under the conditions when our country depends on the military and financial assistance of the coalition of the states, and I would say that you cannot be sure for sure in anything, for 100% in anything, because we've got lots of disbalanced issues, not because of the bad administration or governance. We have good governance now, considering the current conditions, but because we are facing a huge challenge because of the Russian Federation attacking Ukraine. So speaking about the exchange rate, the foreign currency rate is always formed or shaped by the demand and proposition. Let us not look at different factors. If there is the wish of the people or the businesses to buy foreign currency, then this type of foreign currency will increase in its price in comparison with our national currency, hryvnia. If it's done vice versa, the opposite, when the population is selling foreign currency more, the price is going down. And now we have an interesting phenomenon. By the way, in Ukraine, we have a seasonal factor, I would say, when since summer till the end of the year, the Ukrainian hryvnia is devaluating. In simple words, dollar is becoming more expensive. Then after the new year, in January, its price is decreasing, and it is going on till June. Why does it take place? There are several. Well, there is a whole line of factors. I will name three of them. For instance, In Ukrainian economy, a huge part is taken by agrarian sector. And when the agrarians are getting ready to the sowing campaign, they can acquire more fuels and lubricant materials, more of seeds, and that is imported. So they are going and buying more foreign currency. So the demand leads to the increase of the price. But in the end of the year, in December, the state budget, the opposite, is calculated according to different deals and contracts in the organizations and enterprises. They can have bonus salary or allowances, and then there is more hryvnia at the market, and this hryvnia may flow to the foreign currency market, so it raises it. But then after the sowing campaign, when the agrarians have collected the yield, and there is the obligation that after you get the revenue, you need to bring it to Ukraine and convert it into hryvnia, there is an issue, a point in the time when the more foreign currency is sold, so the price is decreasing. What can we say about 2025? Forecasting for the whole year is complicated. I think that till the end of June, hryvnia, in comparison with the US dollar, will be within 41.2, 41.5. In this range. After June, there can be its traditional shift to another side, as it is going on for the recent 10 years, I may say, as much as Ukraine decided to refuse having the fixed rate after the Revolution of Dignity, and we just control the deviations of the exchange rate because of the seasonal factor. But the most important thing I'd like to say now, today, the main participant of the whole currency and foreign currency and exchange market is the National Bank of Ukraine, because it provides the demand which is substantial in Ukraine. And the today's golden reserves, which are within 44 billion US dollars, every quarter when they report about the volume of the foreign exchange reserves, we may say for sure, we may be confident that the National Bank has the opportunity to control it and not to have a certain collapse or any of the harsh steps. And at different meetings in the National Bank, they always declare that their main task is so that Ukrainian hryvnia and hryvnia assets could stay attractive. And I think that we'll speak about the recommendations for Ukrainians, then I will tell you more details. Let me ask you the following. If we understand that there are lots of factors which can influence our exchange rate, speaking about the end of the year, which figure can we hope for? I think that you would like me to comment on what they had in the budget, the figure of the Ministry of Finance when they decided to foresee the exchange rate. I already answered this question many times. I try to comment on that again. Why can we have certain new figures in different state authorities, and how can Ukrainians react to that? Because mostly Ukrainians know that the state is something separate and there should be one and only indicator. So when one is saying 46, for instance, no, there was never 46. As far as I know, the Ministry of Finance in the draft of the state budget wrote 45 hryvnia per American dollar. But today we have 41 hryvnia per American dollar. And it seems to me 20 kopecks, right? So the main exchange rate nominator is the National Bank of Ukraine. And this is an independent agency with a special status. And this and other authorities don't have influence on this policy. Why does the Ministry of Finance foresee anything and is obliged to provide you with some figure in the state budget? Because when they create the state budget, they understand that they have certain revenues from the foreign international assistance. And this assistance is in different foreign currencies, euro, dollars, Japanese yens, and others. And the Ministry of Finance needs to convert it in their draft of the state budget per 2025 into hryvnia. And that is why they have to try to foresee anything. Does it have influence onto the National Bank, which is, in fact, responsible for the exchange rate? Definitely not. And This is the first part of my answer, and the second part of my answer is the following. I think that the Ministry of Finance in this case is a bit too pessimistic about the process of the exchange rate formation, especially in the current year. I think that till the end of the year, hryvnia can be devaluated, but I am sure that it will not devaluate up to 45 hryvnia per dollar, because it can lead to other consequences. If the National Bank does not keep it and it is devalued, there can be panic among the businesses, among the Ukrainians, and the overall demand will lead to the increase of inflation. No one needs that. So I'm sure that these figures, well, in the media, they were a kind of a red line, of course, but I'm sure that the National Bank will never allow such a substantial devaluation of hryvnia, even considering that after June, our trend is really becoming the opposite. One of the reactions of Ukrainians against the geopolitical challenges were the jokes that you need to urgently exchange the money, dollars per euro. Maybe you saw some discussions about that. So I'd like to ask you about the recommendations. How can Ukrainians better save money and preserve their savings, and whether it is worth seeing euro more? I think it's a very subtle story about the participation. If we speak about usual Ukrainians who have their average Ukrainians who have their savings, let alone the volumes, you should just look at your savings and calculate the difference which you'd get if you converted anything. But I'd like to drive your attention. The sales and the buying exchange rate are different. When you buy the foreign currency, you buy it according to one exchange rate, but you sell according to the different exchange rate. Looking at the adequate volume, when an average Ukrainian may have in his or her savings, it seems to me that the risk that you do not understand it is very high. If you look at euro and dollar, and their pair changed their ratio from 1.5 to 1 and to 10, it's a kind of a black swan. When in a certain country you may have certain statements that will have tariffs, and then we have a break for a month in these tariffs, then we make another statement. It seems to me that in this example, it's more the question not about savings of your money, but speaking about the professional market participants, they can already take into consideration those risks and big portfolios which they manage. As for the smaller sums of money, well, of course, it's a relative. What's big, what's small, but still, what can I recommend? The main task which is appointed by the National Bank is to provide hryvnia, the attractiveness of hryvnia as a tool. In Ukraine, during 3 years, we have the indicator of inflation. And for instance, during the first year, when there was the shock, the invasion took place, and inflation achieved 29%, during the second year it slowed down substantially because there was stabilization of the situation in all of the front lines, in the economic issues and others. The inflation in the end of the year was either 6 or 7%, or maybe even 5, I don't remember honestly. 2023, the end of 2023 seems to be a different life, honestly. In 2024, the National Bank forecasted in the corridor of 8 to 10%, but still it achieved 12% because we had foreign currency liberalization, we had mitigation at the market, the businesses could buy foreign currency to pay for their credit contracts, and then other processes started, which were simultaneous, and then there were additional taxes for the Naftogaz and oil and gas and alcohol and tobacco. That is why the inflation achieved 12%. The main task which the National Bank is coping with for the tool to cover inflation would compensate the negative impact. When there was the average increase of the price for 12%, if you have 100,000 or 300,000 of hryvnia of savings, you could somewhere deposit them, and your revenue should cover the negative influence of devaluation, of inflation, and so you could have some additional revenue. So if we calculate, we provided a little of a test. We took a sum of 100,000 hryvnia or 300,000, and what could happen if you deposited it. The main two hryvnia tools which are very popular, those are the state bonds and the deposits in the banks. That's a classical one. And in both cases, we could see that if this sum of money is fixed in this or that tool, it will cover all of the negative phenomena of each of the 3 years of the full-scale invasion, all of the negative phenomena. So that is why I recommend not to well, of course, you should deposit your investments into different baskets, not into one foreign currency. Of course, you can use foreign currencies as well, but hryvnia is also very stable. The National Bank is doing everything possible so that hryvnia could be an attractive tool. If it is a deposit or you bought domestic bonds, I'd like to drive your attention that today they are approximately 15 to 17%, both deposit and bonds. And the inflation as of the end of the year was 12, now it seems to me 13%. So still the revenue of the deposits and domestic bonds is higher. And by the way, the banks, as the National Bank is increasing its interest rate, they will increase the discount rates as well. So as for the investments, I'd like to ask you whether you'd advise the Ukrainians to think about investments, whether you need to invest, and if you should invest, what are the options? Well, you know, I would like to understand what investments you're speaking about. Because if we speak, for instance, about your own business, or, for instance, the popular investment tool in Ukraine like real estate, then, of course, look, you need to look at the price. If the price of this asset, and you should look at it not just during 3 months or today, but during 3 years. You should look at the price during the shock period in March, April, May of 2022. Then in October, November, the beginning of the mass strikes of the energy infrastructure, which we were not ready to. As far as I remember, on the 10th of October of 2022, I used to be at the railway station when 2 missiles hit the heat power plant, which is not far from the Tower 101, closer to the railway station, or when Ukraine liberated Kharkiv region and Kherson city, there were positive moods, and all of that reflected on the economic different indicators, including the exchange rate. So we have certain response of the currency rate onto such events. And other investment tools, for instance, investing into the shares of bigger corporations, which, by the way, recently show negative tendencies. But if we look that for many years in Ukraine we speak about the internal market of shares, which so far is not working, but we would like it after the stabilization of economy and the situation with the war and the recovery of Ukraine. I think it will be a very nice and comprehensible tool for the market when we have the internal market of, in fact, securities. So as for the investments, you need to understand whether this sphere is understandable for you. Then you should look at the price dynamics. Speaking about real estate or your own business, you need to look into the region, which exactly sphere you're dealing with. The rules of investors always tell you you should try and buy when the price is low, but you should sell when the price is higher. And traditional emotion of a human being is working in the opposite way. When you can see that something is growing in its price, you think, I will buy it, it will grow even more than I will earn. But when it is going down, you think, oh my God, it's going down so much, maybe I need to sell. But in fact, it's working the opposite way around. So Ukraine is living under missile strikes and bombs now, so you cannot be sure how you should do, what would be the appropriate way of doing. The insurance of war risks, we are fighting for this tool as well, because the investments from the West, which are super abnormal and very high, and we are expecting that the investments should be comprehensible and comfortable for the foreigners. It's not about patriotism. It's because they can construct a factory on the production of something in Mexico or in South America or in Ukraine or maybe in Texas in the US. So without any sentiments, you need to weigh in the risks. And if you cover the military risks by the state, you mean insurance of these risks by the state is interested to do that, then of course such investor, considering that so far Ukraine has the level of the salaries which is more competitive than in other countries, then I think that we should be working on that in the banking sector. So what's the stage of this insurance? Export Credit Agency, together with the Ministry of Economy, if I'm not mistaken, has already started the insurance process of the first cases. I cannot so far confidently tell you that this is already a system, but during some period of time, we had a long preparation period. And when there is a long preparation period, we'd always like to have it today or maybe even yesterday. But no one cancelled the procedures when the international contracts have to be totally documented in the legislation, and the legislation should be amended. So the Export Credit Agency, if I'm not mistaken, has already had the first credit ones. They recently had the huge expert forum in February or in January this year, and they can already tell you that the first insurance cases have taken place. We wish you them success, so that as much investors got to know about that as possible and started using such a tool. And the last question, I wanted to ask you about the deposits. You said about loans that in 2023 we already hit the rock bottom and the situation is corrected. So if we speak about the deposits, do you see the positive dynamics in that? The small outflow of deposits in the banking system definitely took place in 2022, but if I'm not mistaken, we are actively monitoring 2023 and 2024, the beginning of 2025. The deposit base is increasing on a permanent basis in hryvnia, of course, as we are speaking about hryvnia, in the equivalent of hryvnia, okay. But still, that is a very bright example that the money which you have, which I have, if we speak about the cashless money, because cash is a different story. So looking at the non-cash ones, or cashless ones, these funds are staying in the bank accounts. We are using them in our daily life, and it means that the technological systems satisfy us. I propagate that since 2019, that I would never take hryvnia in cash with me. On me. I'm trying where I didn't have the opportunity to pay with a card for goods or services or with the help of my smartphone. I'd like to search for the places where I can pay cashless. Since 2019 till today, all of the segments of economy more and more are covered by that. And today you can, without using any cash, you can leave and even go by a short bus, in the underground, anywhere. So technological level allows us to treat this phenomenon as convenience one. Especially when people left for Europe, they saw how their banking sector is working and how it is done here. When it is hard for you to wait for the operator in the call center for half a minute or to get some receipt instantaneously online, abroad you have to wait for that for 3 days. And the level of trust, when you have 1,000 or 500,000 of hryvnia on the card for daily payments, it's one story. But on the other hand, when you have revenue and you don't take it and convert it into cash, then it means that you trust the system. We today have the Fund of Investments Guarantees, which under the conditions of war, they cover all of the deposits in case of the bankruptcy of the bank. During the 3 years of the full-scale invasion, there were not that many banks which went bankrupt because we had the well-prepared banking market for the military invasion, for this shock. It was well prepared beforehand, and I can see that Ukrainians today, well, for me, honestly speaking, it's the indicator of the growth of deposits of businesses and population in the system is the indicator of trust. If it is constantly growing, and during the last 12 months, our research witnesses, 11 of the 12 or 10 of the 12 months, it is growing on a monthly basis. This means trust. This means that in our banking system, the Ukrainians and Ukrainian business is showing trust. I thank you for this conversation. Let me remind you, we had Andriy Dubas here, president of the Association of Ukrainian Banks. Undoubtedly, I would like to thank our defense and security forces, thanks to whom we have the opportunity to get here together and to form such events. We are forming the schedule for tomorrow. Follow our investments. Glory to Ukraine. See you soon.